What happens if you combine Tetris, Dark Souls, and the roguelike genre? Why, you get Loot River, of course. This brand new title from Straka Studio is available day one on Game Pass, and after a bit of early trepidation, I ended up greatly enjoying my time with it. It is a run-based action platformer full of puzzles, combat, and more water than you'll know what to do with. Featuring a plethora of clever mechanics and good enough combat, is this one worth trying out? Let's find out together on this never-ending path to world salvation in the XboxEra review of Loot River. The first time I ever saw Loot River was back at the ID at Xbox Twitch showcase in March of 2021, and I was immediately interested by its look. This tiny, pixelated character controlling wooden platforms, floating freely in a dark, mysterious world with the words roguelike being thrown around? I was in. And a little over a year later, here we are, and Loot River is everything its initial reveal trailer promised. You have awoken in a broken, rotting world, and you're recruited to help save it, among many other duties you'll find out as the game progresses. Immediately though, things are far deeper than they appear. I try to keep these reviews as spoiler-free as possible, but you will quickly learn just why the roguelike setup here works so damned well. Because whether you defeat the first boss or not, you will quickly meet your end, and that's when the run-based nature of things takes hold. Central to this is the Sanctuary Hub, where you will find and recruit new members to help you with the overall metagame of everything. The mysterious figure who recruits you can offer up modifiers for your runs that change things up quite a bit. The Master-at-Arms can slowly, and very slow to start, unlock various weaponry that has a chance of dropping at random during your adventures. There's also a Potion Master who doesn't actually enhance them. Instead, if you lend him a number and clear a level, he'll hand you back twice as much. The runs would typically start with 4 potions, and I would hand over 2 of them to him, clear a level, and then get back 4. It's an interesting gambling mechanic that rewards you for keeping your armor clean. You'll also come across a spellcrafter, a hat vendor, and more as you work your way through the game's surprisingly small number of environments as you attempt to cleanse this world of its evil inhabitants. As I said before, at first progression felt incredibly slow, but after 4 or 5 hours in, and seemingly out of nowhere, I had my first victory. Because I had, without really realizing it, been improving on the game's systems so much on my own that I not only made it to 2 areas I had never been before, but I killed the boss in each and had a fully successful run. It felt incredible, and it was thanks in large part to one of the more forgiving and satisfying parry mechanics in a game to date. Loot River's combat is very much inspired by Dark Souls, but its straight-down view necessitates a few major caveats. A button is your dodge, which is handy but limited in how far you move and how much you can use it. There seems to be a very short internal timer that keeps it from being spammable. X changes between your 2 equipped weapons. Y is your interaction button. The right bumper is your light chainable attack, and right trigger is your heavy move, which can be charged up. The most important button in the game, though, is B, which is for parrying. The timing and animation for parrying change for each weapon, but in general, it is an extremely generous and massively powerful ability. A successful parry opens up most enemies for a devastating, again different per weapon, counter, which features you teleporting in and dealing major damage while you are in a short invincibility window yourself. It did take me a little while to realize just how important parrying is, and when used alongside the game's unique and utterly fabulous reversal system, it can make short work of most opponents. When facing a large group though, parrying isn't always your best option, and that's where your powerful, charged heavy attacks can put in some real work. The early few weapons on hand are not the most satisfying to use though, and I didn't really start enjoying the combat until I had unlocked the first 4 or 5 weapons, which took a surprisingly long amount of time. It is worth it though, because the new weapons and gear you unlock as you progress through the game changed things up so fantastically that it took a mediocre combat system and ended up transforming it into something that was damned fun. If you've been watching this footage though, the main attraction here is the game's traversal system. Your character carries with him a relic that allows full control over the various types of material that float atop this endless river. Each piece has a procedurally generated shape set in a procedurally generated map layout. This endless game of Tetris allows full control over the environment that enhances every part of the game. Your right stick moves up, down, left, and right, for as long as you are unobstructed. Figuring out just how each piece needs to be moved to advance at times makes up the majority of the game's puzzles, and they are very well done. There is a mob type that can lock all floor pieces in place though, so you want to kill that annoying SOB as quickly as possible. And this movement mechanic is key to the combat as well, as you can use it to separate large packs of enemies, which helps keep your health from being chipped away as you power up your character. A key component of any good roguelike is how your build works each run. In this one, growth only occurs mid-run, much like Dead Cells, and there's only one currency which is needed for most things, that being memories. These are dropped seemingly at random from enemies or contained in the various chests around the world, and they are dropped in abundance by bosses. Memories are used at each vendor and sanctuary to permanently unlock their offerings. Early on, it felt damned impossible to ever gain the 20 memories I needed to unlock a new weapon, and I spent hours in frustration as each death meant losing everything I had on hand. After finally mastering the combat though, I started to quickly unlock new weapons, spells, and armor in the form of hats. That allowed me to start tinkering with my builds, which are highly dictated by both the drops you get during a run and the stats you choose whenever you level up. Utilizing a tried and true experience-based system, each enemy you kill will fill your experience meter until you tick over and gain a point. These points can then go into various stats. Strength and dexterity are weapon damage modifiers, with certain weapons benefiting more from one or the other. Vitality ups your life bar by a surprisingly large amount per point. Endurance gives you a longer parry window, and intelligence adds to your spell and critical hit damage. That spell system seems interesting, but even after 4 or 5 successful runs, I only have a small number of them unlocked because I ended up finding the weapon and parry systems more enjoyable, at least early on. The other main component of your build are your 3 ring slots, which can offer up a large variety of either stat or condition-based buffs. Most early rings offer up 1 or 2 to a certain stat, but one of my favorites is an every 5th hit is a guaranteed crit ring, for instance. Much like the memories, they drop at random from enemies with a higher chance to drop from bosses, and they only last as long as their current run is going. It's not as deep overall as Dead Cells, but it's deep enough. I felt satisfied overall, and making a build that best suited my gameplay was a breeze. Graphically, it's an interesting looking game, though sadly there's not a Series X version, so there are no high frame rate modes on offer. Everything is from that far off top-down view, and it ran on average well over 200 FPS on my PC, and I can't imagine a proper series version couldn't hold a steady 120 FPS as well. Thankfully though, the soundtrack is damned good, if a bit limited, and there is no voice acting on offer. The writing is well done though, and again, it's a bit limited, and the interaction system lacks clarity on when a conversation is over. Instead, you find out by pressing Y and being greeted with the same short line repeatedly. I did have a few progression and loading bugs while playing on both Steam and Series X, but each was solved with client-side patches before launch. Other than that, things ran well, looked nice, and sounded great the majority of the time. With the way the hub world interacts with the game in each run, I'm also really interested to see where DLC could possibly go in the future. I do hope that they add a bit more variety to the bosses, as I did find myself able to cheese them quite easily once I figured out their movement and attacks. Accessibility-wise, the game features an easy mode that lowers your damage taken and ups the damage you dish out, alongside a bevy of language options. PC did have very little in the way of graphical options, with the main one being focused on the quality of the water. And as this is not a native series title, it is not featuring quick resume at the time of my review. Though hopefully this does get patched in later, we just never have any idea if that's going to happen or not. In conclusion, after a slow start, Loot River really grew on me. It took longer than I would have liked to start progressing, but once I did, things felt good enough combat-wise, incredible enough movement-wise, and intriguing enough roguelike-wise that I ended up putting up a lot of time of this, especially on PC. It is available day one on Game Pass, and it is exclusive to Xbox and PC at launch. If you have the patience, you will be rewarded with one of the more unique takes on the genre, and I think that it is well worth checking out. Thank you so much for watching. If you can like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps that darned YouTube algorithm. And you can visit us at patreon.com/XboxEra if you really want to help. And we'll see you next time.